The world keeps speaking louder, faster, more desperate. Everyone has something to say, but very few have something worth hearing. You live in an age where silence is feared. People mistake noise for meaning, attention for connection, talking for truth. But silence is not emptiness. It's presence. It's patience. It's the space where wisdom lives. Most people fill that space with fear, afraid of what might rise if they ever got quiet enough to listen. But silence doesn't expose you. It reveals you. It shows you where you're pretending. It shows you where you're chasing validation. It shows you how much of your life is built on the need to be heard instead of the need to understand. The loudest people rarely know themselves, because they've spent their lives performing. True power doesn't perform. It observes. It moves with purpose. It speaks when necessary. Silence doesn't demand the stage, it becomes the stage. Because when you stop trying to prove your worth, the world starts to feel your presence. The powerful don't chase attention. They command it through restraint, through patience, through calm. Silence doesn't mean you're invisible. It means you're undeniable. You don't heal by holding on to the noise, you heal by stepping beyond it. Beyond the reaction. Beyond the chaos. Beyond the need to explain yourself. That's where you find strength. That's where you find peace. That's where you find you. This is not about retreating from the world. It's about mastering your energy within it. Because silence isn't escape, it's evolution. And when you understand it, when you become one, you won't need to raise your voice ever again. Welcome to the power of silence. Chapter 1. The noise that drowns you. Noise isn't just sound. Noise is everything that pulls you away from yourself. It's the scrolling, the checking, the comparison, the endless movement that makes you feel productive but keeps you from being present. You call it stimulation, but it's starvation. Starvation of attention, focus, and peace. You've been taught that silence is emptiness. But silence is not empty, it's everything you've been too busy to hear. Every time you speak just to fill space, every time you chase validation through noise, you abandon the most powerful relationship in your life, the one you have with your own mind. Noise keeps you from hearing the whispers of intuition. It numbs the wisdom trying to reach you. It drowns your truth under layers of distraction. And here's the hardest part, you've grown addicted to it. Because silence is uncomfortable. It exposes everything noise helps you avoid. That's why most people can't sit still. Not because they're too busy, but because they're afraid of what they might meet if the noise ever stopped. But peace isn't found by escaping noise, it's found by understanding it. Noise exists to test your focus. It's not your enemy, it's your training. If you can stay calm in noise, you can stay calm anywhere. If you can think in chaos, you can lead in a crisis. That's the power of stillness. When you're always consuming, you forget how to create. When you're always reacting, you forget how to observe. When you're always talking, you forget how to listen. Noise is not harmless. It fragments you. It convinces you that attention equals life, but attention without awareness is emptiness. Real life isn't happening in notifications. It's happening now. In the quiet hum of existence you've been too distracted to feel. Listen carefully. Right now. This moment. the sound between words. That's where your mind begins to heal. The world wants your energy. Every platform, every conversation, every crisis feeds on your attention. But silence reclaims it. It takes your energy back. And that's what makes silence powerful. It's a rebellion disguised as peace. Every time you choose silence, you're saying no to distraction, no to performance, no to the endless noise that keeps you numb. You're saying yes to clarity, to peace, to presence. You can't hear your own thoughts when you're surrounded by 1,000 voices. And you can't find your truth if you're drowning in everyone else's. So learn to retreat, not to escape, but to realign. Step out of the current long enough to remember where you are going. You will begin to notice something miraculous. The quieter you become, the louder your intuition speaks. Silence doesn't give you answers. It gives you the space where answers can appear. This is how power is built, not in the noise of reaction, but in the calm of preparation. The one who can sit in silence without craving attention has already mastered 90% of life. Because peace isn't found when the noise ends, peace is found when it no longer controls you. You will start to realize the noise never really disappears. The world keeps spinning. People keep shouting. The current keeps moving, but you become still. And from that stillness, everything starts to make sense again. You'll stop being pulled by urgency and start moving with purpose. You'll stop reacting and start responding. And the things that once overwhelmed you will pass right through you because you are no longer listening to the noise. You are listening to the truth beneath it. This is where mastery begins, not by silencing the world, but by silencing the need to be part of it all the time. You don't heal by silencing the world. You heal by remembering that you were never the noise to begin with. Chapter 2: The Science of Stillness. When you become still, you begin to notice everything that never stopped moving. The breath. The heartbeat. The quiet hum beneath all life. Stillness doesn't mean stopping time, it means stepping outside of its illusion. You've spent most of your life reacting to everything that moves, every message, every opinion, every emotion. You've built your rhythm around response. But the mind was never meant to run at the speed of noise. It was meant to observe it. When you pause long enough, you start to see the patterns between thoughts. You begin to notice how feelings rise and fall without needing your permission. You learn the truth. You are not your thoughts, you are the awareness beneath them. Science calls this neuroplasticity, the brain's ability to rewire itself through awareness. The ancients called it meditation. Different words. Same miracle. When you sit in stillness, your mind stops being a battlefield and becomes a garden. You stop feeding every emotion that passes by. You start observing them instead. And what you observe you begin to master. Every breath becomes an act of control. Every pause becomes a declaration of power. Because the moment you can pause, you interrupt the pattern. The nervous system follows the mind. The mind follows attention. And attention follows silence. This is not philosophy. This is biology. When you stop reacting, your brain shifts from survival to creation. Your heartbeat slows. Your breathing deepens. Your awareness expands. That's why stillness feels powerful, because physiologically, it is. The most dangerous state to live in is constant reaction. It floods your body with adrenaline and cortisol, chemicals built for danger, not daily life. That's why so many live tired, anxious, and numb, not because their lives are bad, but because their minds never rest. Stillness is the antidote. It rewires the nervous system from defense to peace, from survival to command. Every slow breath tells your body, I am safe. And safety is what your system needs to grow, to heal, to think clearly. So when you practice stillness, you are not wasting time, you are reclaiming it. You can test this anywhere. Before you answer that message, pause. Before you explain yourself, pause. Before you defend your ego, pause. And in that pause, feel what happens. The power returns. You realize not every emotion needs a reaction. Not every question deserves an answer. Not every noise deserves your attention. That's the science of stillness. It's the alchemy of reaction turning into awareness. The mind you control through stillness becomes a sanctuary. The mind you neglect through noise becomes a prison. Stillness does not mean inaction. It means perfect action. Every move is deliberate. Every word is essential. Every choice is clear. This is what ancient warriors understood: the art of waiting. They knew that reaction wastes energy, but stillness stores it. When you're calm, you're calculating. When you're centered, you're untouchable. The chaotic mind fights battles it can't win. The still mind wins without fighting. That's why stillness isn't weakness, it's dominance. You've been told you need to do more to feel in control. But mastery begins when you learn to pause more. When you sit in silence, your body begins to sync with something ancient, the rhythm of awareness itself. You're not thinking anymore, you're knowing. You're not chasing, you're aligning. You're not waiting, you're watching. And slowly, you realize the truth no one told you. Stillness doesn't come after clarity. Stillness creates it. The moment you pause, you begin to see everything as it is. Not as you fear it. Not as you want it. But as it truly is. And that kind of vision is power. Stillness is not what you do. It's what you become. It's who you are when you stop performing for the world. In stillness, you don't lose your power. You meet it. Chapter 3: The Weight of Unspoken Words. The most powerful words you'll ever speak are the ones you choose not to say. There's a weight in silence. A kind of presence that fills space without effort, without noise, without demand. The weak fill silence with words. The wise fill it with meaning. Every time you hold back what doesn't need to be said, you build a deeper kind of strength, the strength of restraint. People think power is volume. They think authority is dominance. But true power is stillness under provocation. It's measured speech in a world of impulse. You can always tell who's in control. It's not the one who's talking the most. It's the one who's listening the deepest. Silence unsettles people because they can't read it, can't predict it, I can't control it. That's why silence commands respect. It makes people feel your presence before they hear your voice. Your stillness becomes a mirror. And in that mirror, others see their own noise. The power of silence in leadership. In moments of crisis, great leaders have always understood that silence can save what words would destroy. In the early 1960s, one president sat in a room where every voice shouted for immediate action. But he stayed silent. He waited. He thought. And in that pause, that space between pressure and wisdom, he prevented catastrophe. He didn't win through dominance. He won through calm. The world saw restraint. History saw leadership. And silence spoke louder than any speech ever could. The artist who spoke without words. Centuries earlier, another man found truth in quiet observation. Leonardo da Vinci would spend hours, even days, staring at a wall, at water, at light. His apprentices whispered that he was wasting time. But Leonardo understood, before you create, you must learn to see. And to see deeply, you must be silent. That's why his work still speaks today, because every brushstroke carries the depth of a man who listened to silence until it told him the truth. His genius wasn't born in the noise of creation. It was born in the stillness before it. The modern power of the pause. Even in the modern world, some of the greatest innovators understood the same law. During meetings, Steve Jobs would ask a question and then go completely silent. Seconds passed. Then minutes. No expression. No hint. No reaction. The silence was uncomfortable. But that's the point. In that discomfort, truth revealed itself. The people who rushed to fill it often revealed their uncertainty. The ones who could wait revealed their strength. He wasn't testing knowledge. He was testing composure. Because silence is not the absence of leadership. It is the essence of it. The unspoken carries power because it suggests depth. It suggests thought. It suggests patience, and patience is intimidating in a world addicted to reaction. The more comfortable you become with silence, the more people start paying attention when you do speak. Because silence creates contrast, and contrast creates impact. When you talk constantly, your words lose value. When you speak rarely, each word becomes currency. That's how you build presence. Not by saying more, but by meaning every syllable you say. People remember tone long after they forget content. They remember energy long after they forget language. Your silence becomes your signature, the sound of calm confidence that doesn't need to prove anything. And when you finally do speak, your words cut through the noise like a blade through water. This is not charisma. It's control. And control begins long before the mouth opens. Every pause, every inhale, every held thought is an act of power. You are teaching yourself patience, and the world can feel it. When you can hold silence comfortably, you are no longer desperate to be understood. You are no longer fighting for attention. You are simply being, and that's enough. The world rewards those who can endure silence, because silence reveals truth. When someone rushes to fill a pause, they reveal insecurity. When someone interrupts, they reveal impulse. When someone can sit in stillness, they reveal strength. It's not about being mysterious. It's about being measured. Not about withholding words, but understanding their value. Every sentence you don't say, you store energy. You build presence. You grow in patience. And slowly, people begin to treat you differently. They speak softer around you. They think before they answer. They measure their tone. Because you've changed the frequency of the room. Your silence sets the rhythm. This is how influence begins, not by dominating others, but by mastering yourself. Because the one who doesn't need to speak always holds the most power. So the next time you feel the urge to explain, to defend, to correct, Stop. Wait. Let silence carry the message. It says everything you never could with fewer words, and far more weight. Chapter 4. Listening as Power. Most people don't listen to understand. They listen to reply. They wait for their turn to speak, not for their chance to connect. That's why silence is rare and why it's powerful. True listening is not a passive act. It's an energy exchange. It's awareness turned outward. It's the discipline of hearing what's not being said. You can't do that when your mind is loud. You can't sense the truth when you're busy rehearsing your next sentence. When you really listen, you shift from ego to presence, from control to understanding, from reaction to command. Most people crave being heard more than being right. And when they finally meet someone who truly listens, they remember them forever. That's the power of silence. It disarms defenses. It heals tension. It opens trust. The psychology of listening. Neuroscience shows that the brain releases oxytocin, the chemical of connection when we feel genuinely listened to. It slows the heartbeat, softens the voice, and opens the mind. So when you listen deeply, you're not just building rapport, you're literally reprogramming the nervous system of the person in front of you. That's why great leaders listen more than they speak. Because listening isn't a weakness. It's a strategy. Silence lets others reveal themselves, their truth, their insecurity, their motives. The quiet observer always knows the most because the world reveals itself to those who don't interrupt it. Real-world example. The leader who listened. When Nelson Mandela was in prison for 27 years, he learned that power was not in words but in the pauses between them. When he finally became president, he was known for sitting in meetings and letting everyone else speak first. He'd wait. He'd listen. He'd ask questions quietly, never rushing his response. People left those rooms feeling respected, and that's why they followed him. He once said, "When you speak, you repeat what you already know. But when you listen, you learn something new." That is the essence of power through silence. The listener as the strongest voice. Listening doesn't make you smaller. It makes you sovereign. Because when you're not trying to prove yourself, you can finally see others clearly. And when you see others clearly, you can move the world quietly. Listening isn't submission. It's an observation. It's study. It's power gathering itself in stillness. When you listen without judgment, you stop reacting to people's words and start hearing their energy. You'll notice their tone change when they lie. You'll feel their hesitation when they're hiding something. You'll sense their pain before they speak it. That's not intuition. That's awareness trained through silence. In a world where everyone is performing, the listener becomes the truth seeker. The calm eye in the storm. The presence that steadies the room. How to practice listening as power. Start small. When someone speaks, don't rush to fill the space. Pause. Let their words settle. Feel the silence between their sentences, that's where truth lives. Notice their breathing, their pauses, their tone. Most people reveal everything you need to know without ever saying it directly. When you give others the gift of attention, you become magnetic. Because people sense when your energy is still. They trust it. You don't need to out-talk them. You don't need to prove anything. You just need to see them. And that kind of seeing makes people feel safe, and safety creates loyalty. The listener and the universe. Listening doesn't just change your relationships. It changes your connection to life itself. When you listen to the world, to the wind, to silence, to breath, you start realizing the universe has always been speaking. You were just too noisy to hear it. Stillness tunes your perception. It sharpens your instincts. It lets you hear the subtle language beneath reality, the way everything moves, hums, and guides. That's why the wisest people seem to know things before they happen. They're not guessing. They're listening. When you learn to listen, you learn to lead. Because power doesn't always come from being heard. Sometimes, it comes from hearing fully. You stop forcing outcomes and start sensing timing. You stop convincing and start understanding. And understanding moves mountains. Chapter 5. The Language of Energy. Even when you say nothing, you're still speaking. Every breath, every glance, every pause between your words, it all communicates. People don't just hear you, they feel you. And the truth is, most of what you say has nothing to do with language at all. Your energy speaks before your mouth opens. It announces your confidence, your calm, your chaos, your intent. That's why some people walk into a room and shift the atmosphere without saying a word. And others speak endlessly, yet no one truly listens. Energy is the language of presence, and silence is its grammar. The body speaks before the tongue does. Your tone carries more truth than your words. Your eyes reveal more than your answers. This is the unseen conversation, the one every human feels, but few ever learn to read. The science behind energy. Psychology calls it nonverbal communication. But science can't fully define it because energy is more than body language. It's a vibration. It's my intention. It's the invisible rhythm between two minds. When you speak with peace, your energy slows the pace of others. When you speak from chaos, your energy infects them. Every interaction is a transfer, and silence, when mastered, becomes the cleanest, strongest signal you can send. That's why calm people draw trust. You can feel their centeredness. You can feel their focus. Their presence feels like gravity. They don't have to demand respect, they radiate it. Real-world example, the samurai's presence. In ancient Japan, the samurai were trained to master stillness before combat. They would sit in complete silence, breathing, centering, slowing the pulse, because they knew something timeless. Your energy decides the outcome before the battle begins. A nervous warrior draws fear from his enemy. A calm one projects inevitability. The fight is already won, not through muscle, but through presence. That's what the samurai called zanshin, the state of perfect awareness. A body so still, it feels unstoppable. Modern application. The quiet communicator. You don't need a sword to practice zanshin. You need awareness. When you walk into a room, your energy speaks first. It says, I'm here. It says, I'm grounded. It says, I don't need to prove anything. People can feel the difference between confidence and performance. Performance is loud. Confidence is silent. You can fake words. You can't fake energy. The mind might lie, but the nervous system doesn't. The energy of authenticity. Energy doesn't come from trying harder. It comes from aligning deeper. When what you think, what you say, and what you do are finally the same, your presence becomes undeniable. That's why authenticity is magnetic. People can sense when your words match your frequency. They feel safe in your energy, even if they can't explain why. Silence sharpens that alignment. It strips away performance, ego, and pretense. It lets your real energy, the one beneath personality, shine through. That's why people say, your vibe attracts your tribe. Because your energy is your introduction long before you say hello. How to master the language of energy. Start by becoming aware of what you transmit. When you walk into a space, ask yourself, what am I radiating right now? Anxiety? Calm? Need? Strength? Your breath is your translator. Your posture is your punctuation. Your silence is your sentence. Slow your breathing before you speak. Lift your posture before you listen. Enter every space with quiet intention. That's how your energy begins to speak clearly. Words can be ignored. Energy cannot. It always tells the truth, and everyone feels it, even if they can't name it. So when your silence feels calm, your energy becomes contagious. When your silence feels grounded, your energy becomes guidance. When your silence feels strong, your energy becomes leadership. You don't need to announce who you are. You just need to embody it. Because energy doesn't ask for permission. It simply arrives and commands the room. Chapter 6. The Strength of Restraint. Restraint is not silence out of fear. It's silence born of power. Anyone can react. Few can remain composed. Restraint is what separates the strong from the impulsive, the wise from the loud. They focused on the fragile. Because in a world that provokes you daily, the one who doesn't react rules the one who does. The cost of reaction. Every time you react in anger, you hand your power to someone else. Every time you let emotion dictate response, you give away control of your story. Reaction feels powerful, but it isn't. It's the illusion of movement. A flash of emotion that burns fast and leaves you emptier than before. You think you've stood your ground. But really, you've been pulled from it. That's how noise wins. Not by overpowering you, but by distracting you. The power of pause. Restraint is your weapon. Your pause is your defense. Every time you choose not to react, you strengthen your mind's command center, the part that leads instead of follows. That pause rewires your brain. It interrupts the loop of emotion and impulse. It gives space for wisdom to breathe. That's why restraint feels hard at first, because you're breaking an addiction. The addiction to noise. The addiction to being right. The addiction to reaction. But once you master it, nothing and no one can pull you out of peace. Real-world example, the Stoic king. Thousands of years ago, a Roman emperor named Marcus Aurelius ruled an empire in chaos, wars outside, politics inside, betrayal everywhere. But while others shouted and schemed, He wrote quietly to himself. Not speeches. Not orders. Reflections. He practiced restraint on paper before he practiced it in public. And through that discipline, he led without panic. His silence wasn't weakness, it was armor. He understood that reaction feeds fire, but stillness contains it. That's why his words still live today, because restraint outlasts rage. Modern reality, the game of triggers. Today, the world has turned provocation into entertainment. Social media thrives on outrage. People measure success in responses, not results. Everyone wants the last word, but no one wants the last piece. Every headline is bait. Every argument is a trap. And every reaction is energy lost. So when you stay silent, when you refuse to play the game, you don't look weak. You look untouchable. Because silence makes noise starve. The discipline of emotional control. Restraint doesn't mean you don't feel. It means you feel fully and still choose wisely. You can acknowledge anger without feeding it. You can see injustice without reacting recklessly. You can face chaos without letting it affect your behavior. That's emotional mastery, feeling deeply, but responding deliberately. And make no mistake, restraint takes strength. Because silence under pressure feels unnatural at first. The ego screams, "Defend yourself." The mind whispers, "Wait." Follow the whisper. That's where wisdom lives. The power dynamic of composure. In conflict, the calmer person always has the advantage. Always. Because composure exposes chaos. When you stay calm, the other person's noise becomes louder to them, and to everyone watching. That's why restraint wins arguments without words. Because silence forces others to face their own lack of control. You don't need to defend your worth to anyone. You prove it every time you stay centered. Remember this, silence isn't withdrawing its dominance. It says, "You can't make me move." And that kind of power no one can argue with. How to practice restraint daily. When someone provokes you, pause. Don't give them your reaction. Give them your stillness. When emotion rises, breathe. Inhale calm. Exhale ego. When tempted to respond, wait. If it's not from peace, it's not from pow. That pause will change your life. Because restraint teaches you one truth. Control doesn't mean suppressing emotion, it means directing it. The strongest warriors fight nothing unnecessarily. The strongest minds argue with no one in turna. LLY. That's the strength of restraint, it doesn't silence you. It frees you. Chapter 7. The Quiet Confidence. True confidence doesn't announce itself. It doesn't need to. The loudest person in the room is rarely the most secure one. Quiet confidence is different. It doesn't need applause. It doesn't need validation. It doesn't need to be seen because it already is. Confidence isn't about what you project. It's about what you protect. It's the steady pulse beneath the noise, the unshaken core that doesn't waver when the world tries to pull you off balance. Quiet confidence isn't the absence of doubt. It's the mastery of it. It's knowing you can handle anything without needing to prove it to anyone. The psychology of presence. Confidence is energy, not words. And people can feel when that energy is real. When your energy says, "I belong here," you don't need to shout it. The world adjusts around you. You've seen it. Someone walks into a room, doesn't say much, but somehow everyone turns. That's presence. And presence isn't built through performance, it's built through peace. People mistake noise for power. But power doesn't chase attention. It attracts them. Quiet confidence doesn't demand space. It creates it. Real-world example. The dignity of stillness. Think of Martin Luther King Jr. When he spoke, his words carried fire, but it was his stillness between the words that made people listen. His pauses weren't empty. They were alive. They made every sentence sacred. Because confidence isn't in how much you say, it's in how fully you believe what you say. That's the paradox of presence. People trust the calm more than the loud. The world remembers the ones who spoke with conviction, but followed with composure. The balance of power and peace. Quiet confidence isn't soft. It's power without tension. It's strength without resistance. Confidence built on ego collapses when it's challenged. But confidence built on peace endures anything. When you're calm, you see things others miss. You move slower, but hit sharper. You no longer act to prove something, you act to express something. That's confidence when your being becomes louder than your performance. The confidence trap. Most people perform with confidence. They wear it like clothing, but the moment life tests them, it falls away. They speak in absolutes. They post every move. They crave reassurance. That's not confidence. That's insecurity dressed in volume. Quiet confidence doesn't need to convince. It already knows. And when you know, you stop performing. You stop over-explaining. You stop competing. You stop rushing. You simply move with intent. That's what makes it magnetic, the energy of someone who isn't waiting for permission anymore. The source of true confidence. Confidence doesn't come from being perfect. It comes from being aligned. When what you think, what you say, and what you do are finally the same, you stop chasing validation. You realize that authenticity is louder than arrogance, and integrity is stronger than intensity. That's why silence feels powerful, because it can't be faked. You can pretend to be confident, but you can't pretend to be peaceful. And the world feels the difference. How to build quiet confidence. Speak less, mean more. Every unnecessary word weakens your impact. Move slower. Calm motion signals certainty. Stop explaining yourself. The need to prove is the death of confidence. Be okay with being misunderstood. The strong are often misread by the loud. Quiet confidence grows through consistency, not performance. Every time you choose peace over reaction, focus over distraction, purpose over appearance, you strengthen it. And soon, people will start to notice something different about you. They won't know what changed. They'll just feel it. That's what true confidence sounds like, the silence that makes the room still. Chapter 8. The detachment of ego. The ego is loud. It always wants to be heard. It wants to be right. It wants to be admired. It wants to win even when there's nothing worth winning. The ego doesn't want peace. It wants control. It feeds on noise, because silence exposes it. That's why silence feels threatening to some people, because in silence, the mask starts to fall. The ego says, "Who are you without me?" And the soul whispers, "Free." The nature of ego. Ego is not evil. It's just insecure. It was built to protect you, to keep you safe, visible, and validated. But when protection becomes obsession, ego becomes prison. You start building walls made of opinions. You start defending yourself from ghosts. The ego wants to be right, but the soul wants to be real. And you can't serve both. You'll know you're trapped in ego when peace feels like defeat. You'll know you're transcending it when silence starts to feel like freedom. The ego's addiction to noise. The ego can't survive without noise. It needs feedback to exist. Likes, comments, praise, comparison. That's its food. Take away the reaction and the ego starts to panic. It says, "They're not noticing you. They're forgetting you. They're moving on." But that's not a loss. That's liberation. When you detach from the need to be seen, you start to see yourself clearly for the first time. Because the truth is, you were never meant to be the noise. You were meant to be the awareness listening behind it. Real-world example. The master who stopped seeking. A Zen story tells of a young monk who spent years trying to reach enlightenment. He meditated longer than everyone, spoke softly, dressed perfectly, but his teacher saw the struggle, the ego hiding in spiritual disguise. One day, the teacher said, "Stop trying to be holy. Just sit." The monk was offended. He thought silence was supposed to look like effort. But the teacher smiled and said, "Enlightenment isn't found in trying. It's found in letting go of the one who's trying." And in that moment, the monk finally understood. The ego is the noise. The self is the silence. How ego hides in everyday life. Ego isn't always arrogant. Sometimes it's insecurity wearing a crown. It shows up when you over-explain, when you seek attention, when you compare your pace to someone else's. It shows up when you post not to share but to prove. It shows up every time you trade peace for perception. And it always leaves you empty, because ego feeds on validation that doesn't last. You can never satisfy it, you can only silence it. The liberation of detachment. When you detach from ego, you stop performing for the world and start living from the truth. You stop explaining. You stop defending. You stop chasing closure from people who can't understand you. You start becoming whole again. Detachment isn't indifference. It's independence. It's the art of caring deeply without clinging tightly. When you detach, you don't stop loving, you just stop needing love to validate you. You stop needing applause to feel worthy. You stop needing control to feel safe. You start trusting life again. Practicing detachment in a noisy world. When your ego rises, notice it. Don't fight it. Observe it. Say to yourself, "This isn't me. It's my habit." Then pause. Breathe. Let silence take the stage. When you feel the urge to defend, ask, what am I trying to protect? You'll find it's never truth, only image. And every time you release that image, you become more powerful. Because the world can only control the version of you that's still pretending. When you let that go, you become untouchable. The end of the illusion. Ego says, I am what they think. The soul says, I am. Ego seeks noise to exist. The soul creates silence to expand. And one day, you'll look back at all the moments you wanted to prove yourself and realize you were already enough. You don't need to be noticed. You need to be free. That's the power of detachment. It's not about having less. It's about needing less. And that's where peace begins. Chapter 9. The Silence of Strength. Strength isn't always loud. Sometimes it sounds like nothing at all. No shouting. No proof. Just a quiet, steady presence. Because real strength isn't what you show. It's what you withstand. Anyone can appear powerful when life is easy. But silence is what keeps you powerful when it isn't. The silence of strength is calm in chaos. Stillness in a storm. Clarity in confusion. It's the kind of strength that doesn't need to fight for peace because it has already found it. The strength hidden in endurance. There's a kind of power that doesn't look impressive. It looks quiet, patient, unseen. It's the strength to stay when you want to run, to keep faith when everything falls apart, to smile when no one's watching. That's not weakness, that's divine discipline. The strongest people aren't the ones who shout, but the ones who keep walking in silence when their soul is screaming. They carry storms inside them and still choose peace. That's power. Real-world example. The quiet resilience. In 1990, a man named Viktor Frankl, a survivor of the Holocaust, wrote about finding meaning in suffering. He had lost everything: family, freedom, dignity. But in the silence of his own mind, he found strength that no one could take. He realized something eternal, that between stimulus and response, there is a space. And in that space lies your power, your freedom, your strength. Frankl said, everything can be taken from a man, but one thing, the last of human freedoms: to choose one's attitude in any given set of circumstances. That's the silence of strength, the power to choose peace when pain demands noise. Strength without struggle. True strength doesn't resist life. It flows with it. When you stop fighting reality, you start moving with purpose. This doesn't mean you give up. It means you stop wasting energy on resistance. You start seeing clearly. You act calm. You move from command. That's the kind of power that lasts, the kind that isn't reactive, but responsive. The inner fortress. The silence of strength is an inner fortress. It's not coldness, it's clarity. It's not indifference, it's intelligence. It's the awareness that not every battle needs a warrior. Some only need wisdom. When you master that, no insult, no betrayal, no chaos can shake you anymore. You stop defending yourself from words. You stop fighting ghosts. You stop chasing control. You simply are. And that being is unbreakable. The strength in surrender. Sometimes strength looks like walking away. Sometimes it looks like letting go. Sometimes it looks like silence when you could destroy a sentence. That's not a weakness. That's mastery. Because it takes power to react, but it takes greatness to stay still. Surrender isn't losing. It's trusting that not everything needs your control. It's realizing that peace is more valuable than being right. The strongest one isn't the one who wins the argument, it's the one who doesn't need to. How to practice the silence of strength. When chaos rises, breathe slower. When fear speaks, listen quieter. When people test you, respond later. You don't owe anyone your energy. You don't owe anyone your reaction. Your silence will speak for you. It will say, I'm not moved by this. I've been here before, and I'm still standing. That's strength, the calm that endures. And one day, you'll realize that silence didn't make you passive. It made you powerful. Because the ones who master quiet move the world without noise. Chapter 10. Rising Beyond the Noise. You've been told that strength is loud. That victory looks like noise. That success must be seen to be real. But you know better now. You've seen what noise really is. Distraction. Ego. Performance. And you've learned to step beyond it. You've faced the chaos. You've met your fears. You felt the noise claw at your mind. And you didn't flinch. Because silence is not weakness. It's evolution. The transformation. You've learned to listen. You've learned to wait. You've learned to detach. And now you're learning to rise. Rise above the arguments that no longer matter. Rise above the opinions that once defined you. Rise above the endless need to prove, explain, or perform. You are not the noise. You are the awareness behind it. That realization is power. That calm is control. That peace is victory. The silent revolution. The world you live in runs on reaction. It feeds on outrage. It profits from distraction. But there's a quiet revolution happening, a movement of those who choose stillness over stimulation, focus over frenzy, peace over popularity. They are not the loudest in the room. They are the ones who build it. They're not arguing in comment sections. They're building legacies in silence. They're not trying to convince. They're too busy becoming. That's the rise beyond noise, when you no longer chase control, because you've become it. The warrior of stillness. The new warrior doesn't fight battles with anger. They win them with awareness. They know that not every attack deserves an answer. Not every insult deserves attention. They move with intention. They speak with precision. They act with purpose. Their power isn't seen in how they react, but in how they remain. That's mastery. That's sovereignty. It's the power to walk through chaos and not become it. The state of true freedom. Freedom is not the absence of problems. It's the absence of attachment to them. It's not about escaping the world. It's about moving through it. Untouched, unshaken, unbothered. Silence gives you that power. It frees you from the opinions of others, from the pull of emotion, from the need for validation. You become quiet. And yet everything you do speaks louder. Because when you master silence, you master yourself. And when you master yourself, you no longer need to control anything else. The practice of rising. Rising beyond the noise isn't a one-time act. It's a daily practice. Every morning you wake up, you have two choices: react to the world or rise above it. You rise every time you choose calm over chaos. You rise every time you breathe before responding. You rise every time you show up quietly and do what needs to be done. That's strength. That's peace. That's freedom. The new way of living. When you live beyond the noise, life becomes simple again. You stop rushing. You stop comparing. You stop explaining. You start being. And in that being, you rediscover joy. The kind of joy that doesn't depend on likes, applause, or approval. Only awareness. Silence becomes your wealth. Presence becomes your luxury. Peace becomes your success. You'll start to notice life doesn't get quieter. You do. And that's when everything changes. The final truth. You don't rise by shouting louder. You rise by standing still longer. You don't win by dominating the world. You win by mastering yourself. You've been running from noise your whole life, but silence was never your enemy. It was your guide, your teacher, your home. And now, you've returned to it. This is not the end. This is the beginning of living awake. Because the moment you stop reacting to the world, you start creating your own. The power of silence. You don't heal by holding on. Silence is not the absence of sound. It's the presence of peace. It's the moment you stop arguing with the past. The moment you stop needing answers from people who never understood your questions. The moment you realize your healing was never waiting for someone else's apology. It was waiting for your ability to let go. You don't heal by holding on to what hurt you. You heal by forgiving it, not because it was right, but because you are done being chained to it. Letting go is not a weakness. It's the loudest form of strength that doesn't need to shout. It's saying, I no longer need to prove I was worthy. Because now, you know you are. Every time you choose not to react, you heal. Every time you choose not to explain, you rise. Every time you choose silence, you take back power. The world will always test you. People will always misunderstand your calm. But that's okay. Because peace was never meant to be understood. It was meant to be felt. And when you finally feel it, you'll realize something powerful. You never needed closure from anyone, only clarity within yourself. So breathe. Let the memories fade into their own quiet corners. Let the noise pass through you. Let the silence become your teacher. Because in the end, healing isn't about forgetting. It's about remembering who you were before the pain. You've come this far. That means you've already begun. You've learned to listen deeper, to speak softer, and to walk lighter. The weight you carried was never yours to keep. Now you can finally set it down. So let this be your reminder. Silence is not empty. It's full of every answer you've been searching for. This is where you stop chasing noise and start hearing your soul again. You don't heal by holding on. You heal by letting go. If this message spoke to you, share it. Subscribe. Keep listening. This is Beyond the Noise Studio.